Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 181, recorded for the week of September 7th, 2022. You get a Tanzu, I get a Tanzu, everyone gets a Tanzu. Good evening, Ryan and Peter.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey. It's we're in the first show of September, which means most of the news stories came from the last week of August, and as I like to do, the cloud providers are on vacation because there's not a lot of news this week, which is great. So it'll be a somewhat short week this week, but still things are going on. And so first up, when we talked about sustainability here over the years. We sort of kind of wonder what the big play was with sustainability and really why we want to do this. And then Gartner apparently published a article talking about 3 reasons that vendors or your SaaS vendors will be increasing prices between 15 and 20% over the next 3 years. And of course, the 2 obvious ones were, well, labor costs are going through the roof, and number 2, inflation. But the first reason they gave was actually sustainability. Sustainability regulations being introduced across the world will make buyers prefer SaaS vendors who are sustainability compliant. And so if you are taking advantage of sustainability services from things like Google Cloud or AWS, you can now potentially charge more money for it, which was not an angle I ever thought of. Telling me why I'm not in BizDev and in cloud instead.
Nothing comes for free. So you want sustainability, you're going to pay.
Sort of funny though, because the whole point of
yeah.
environmental sustainability was to make it cheaper for them, right? So that way they didn't have to raise our prices. But now they found the loophole.
Not yet. I don't think yet. I just think not yet. It's still more expensive.
I wonder, because it does seem like reading through the article that this is more of a, like we're going to raise the costs because of the cost of sustainability, but that's not the real reason, right? Because the expectations that the sustainability efforts are going to lower their overall costs, at least eventually. So feels like this is sort of we've got inflation and rising labor costs and changes of the world, and so we're just going to blame the sustainability because we have easy metrics for that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one thing you can blame, but labor and inflation I think are probably the bigger culprits of why prices are on the rise in all things software these days.
Yeah.
You gotta maintain those margins, man. You can't let inflation eat away at the bottom line. You gotta increase the top line to make up for it. Well, VMware World, or VMworld as I like to call it, which was rebranded to VMware Explorer. I've been calling it VMworld all this time just out of spite. But VMware Explorer conference officially wrapped up, and I can sum it up with Tanzu. Lots of Tanzu. Lots and lots of Tanzu. So, reading through some of the highlights, the new Tanzu app platform, which is like their answer to platform as a service. Tanzu Mission Control to manage all your Kubernetes things like Anthos. Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, which I don't really know what that is because it's a terrible name. Tanzu Observability, which speaks for itself. And then, of course, operator learning subscriptions. So you can guess, for you to guess how to run Tanzu, I guess. Tanzu Activation Services for those who don't want to learn how to do Tanzu but still want it. And Tanzu for Kubernetes operators. VMware cross-cloud services and rapid portfolio modernization services, so you can pay VMware all the monies to make you Tanzu. So that's always good. vSphere Plus, which is a bunch of new enhancements to administration and developer productivity through vSphere, and then vSphere 8 and all associated products like vSAN, which I would have told you was going to happen. All got announced last week at VMware Explorer. So that was it. We talked about some of the ones that are more cloud native, and we do have another cloud-related VMware story today for this week for you. But overall, Tanzu. That's all I know.
No Tanzu on bare metal?
They do run VMware on Outpost, so technically yes.
You can. So
Tanzu on VMware on Outpost is not Tanzu on bare metal.
Yeah. Well, so Tanzu will orchestrate and maintain your bare metal Kubernetes clusters as well as clusters in the cloud, deployed in cloud hypervisor. So does it run in bare metal? I don't know. Some of these announcements are isolated workloads and air gapped. So I assume that there's something that's running somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, it's a lot of cloud subscription services to sort of manage these things as well. These announcements are kind of funny because it's like you see how VMware is positioning themselves just like they did with virtual machines and the orchestration there, and sort of making that easy. They really are doing that for Kubernetes workloads. A lot of these big announcements were Tanzu support of managing existing EKS clusters. So they're really focusing on that operator level who's providing Kubernetes to the rest of their business and trying to optimize across many clusters. In fact, that's all that the Kubernetes grid thing does. All that does is coordinate cluster management. So if you got 1,700 Kubernetes clusters, you can make them all the same with the same settings. So it just automates that and orchestrates that.
They can all go down at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's cool. I think it makes sense that that's what they're focusing on. And then just the question comes down to, if you're picking Kubernetes as your control plane, is VMware the right company to standardize on?
Yeah. I think if you are cloud resistant as an organization and you've already been on the VMware camp for a long time, then this is your solution to being cloudy, but being cloudy in my own data center. And so I think it's an interesting play. I do think Kubernetes is still ridiculously hard, even with GKE and AKS and EKS. I think if VMware can solve the developer problem and the deployment problems and dealing with all the mess of services and pods and all those things and make that more enterprise approachable, they could run away with it. I just don't think they know that yet.
Yeah, I don't see them working towards that. The Kubernetes experience is pretty native, right? That, which is sort of what the market wants. Like developers are active, they want to define their pods and stuff in the YAML and just shove that over to an operations team. And so it's really about the control and maintaining of the Kubernetes platforms itself. So, and like this is also just an abstraction layer, so that if you wanted to run a cluster in GCP and AWS, everyone could use the same centralized Tanzu provided API in your company, and you don't really have to care where that workload is hosted. So, there's some advantages there if you're trying to, keep things, like simplistic from the the cloud API level, right? You only have to give very limited permissions to developers to those cloud resources.
That is a great advantage. For sure.
It's not, I mean, I wouldn't pay the money for it, but like it's definitely something that if you already have VMware and you lumping on a little bit of cost of Tanzu on top of it, and then you can sort of just can have a single control plane for it, maybe it works out.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to AWS with the open sourcing event ruler. For those of you who don't know what an event ruler is, apparently this is the magic behind the 2019 release of Amazon EventBridge, which is, of course, a serverless event bus that makes it easy to connect applications with data from a variety of sources. The key to the service is routing rules that determine where to send your data in real time based on the event payload. Amazon, though, is now taking this technology and making it open source under the Apache 2.0 license. It's a Java library that builds applications that can match any number of rules against events at several hundred thousands of events per second. Both events and rules are JSON objects, but rules additionally can be expressed through an inbuilt query language that helps describe custom matching patterns. The library supports matching against numbers, numeric ranges, IP addresses, booleans, arrays, prefixes, and suffixes. And you can do complex matches against nested JSON objects and check for non-existence of values. You can find all the details on the matchers on the GitHub repo. And despite these features, the library will continue to perform at speed, even if you add millions of rules. Event Ruler is built on top of the finite state machine, where they look at each JSON key value pair one at a time, stepping through the nested JSON objects as necessary, and then comparing each against precompiled rules. There's also the ability to add and remove rules at runtime, which will dynamically update a compiled machine. As rules are precompiled and optimized for matching, you can perform checks very, very fast. And he talked about his 2019 MacBook laptop, Intel-based, that he got 180 million transactions per second on the event ruler. So,
wow.
yeah, this thing is quick.
Yeah, that thing won't even run Chrome anymore. So that's impressive,
180,000 evaluations per second. That's crazy. I'll check that number. Yeah, I definitely I could see some value in this thing if you could use it in other products. It's interesting they chose to open source it because it does seem like it's a pretty key fundamental part of EventBridge. And so giving this technology to the world through Apache 2.0 does feel like a little interesting because Google can now steal this, or Azure, or any other cloud provider. But it's also nice because maybe we can get more matching types with open source contributions to this if it gets popularity. So we're curious to see what happens to it over time. But I like the idea of it.
They should use
Yeah.
Elastic's licensing. Anyone can use it except Google.
and Microsoft.
Yeah.
I mean, I've written kludgier, very not as performant versions of this several times in my career. So this is a great thing to add to the open source community. But it does sort of feel like I don't think AWS is doing this out of the goodness of their heart. So what's the play?
Well, again, like we're beginning to plant seeds to reinvent.
Uh-huh.
And if this is a thing you can use for high performant matching scenarios, maybe this becomes something that gets built into something else later that they want to make it available to you so you can extend it. But we haven't. The picture is still opaque of what the real value of this is going to be. But the fact that it's out there is good. Or it's the classic. I'm leaving Amazon and I worked on this code for 5 years and I'd like to make it open source before I go to my new job,
so I can keep using it.
so I can keep using it at my next place. It could be that classic move. That's one of my favorite open source rules. So.
Yeah, I have seen that before.
It's always a possibility too.
That's funny.
Well, the inspector now supports Windows operating systems for continual software vulnerability scanning of EC2 workloads. That means that Windows Server 2012, 2012 R2, 2016, 2019, and 2022 all support continual EC2 vulnerability scanning. Customers have the inspector EC2 scanning already enabled and the AWS SSM agent installed and configured do not need to take any additional actions to get this benefit. Windows instances will now automatically and continually be scanned for software vulnerabilities and unintended network exposure. And new customers can start with Inspector with a single click in the AWS Management Console. And I don't know if I like this feature or hate this feature, because on one side, when I'm remediating things, I love that things just start coming off the dashboard. But then I also, on the flip side of it, it's like, the vulnerabilities are climbing on Patch Tuesday as it continuously scans for these things.
Mm-hmm.
And my SOC team gets cranky. So pluses and minuses.
Yeah, especially the fact that you don't have to do anything to enable this for Windows workloads if you're already on SSM. So all of a sudden, just boatloads of new vulnerabilities are on that dashboard. Yikes.
Well, you wonder, I don't, it's been a while since I've looked at the Inspector console, but I think you had to schedule Inspector checks previously. So now if it's continuous and you haven't run an Inspector check for a long time, does all of a sudden, does it now poof, you have all these new things that you hadn't scanned for in 6 months for some reason?
Yeah. I mean, when they rebranded, or I guess not really rebranded, but when they redesigned Inspector, it's got a tight integration with SSM. And so it's, part of the SSM management, and that continuous scheduling now is part of orchestrated all through SSM. So yeah, it's very different from the Inspector of
yesteryear,
of the old, because where it was like you scheduled the check and it executed the check, and then if you didn't care about whatever policy you were violating, it didn't matter. There's no chance to edit it. It was just going to return everything that it found.
Perfect.
Not the most useful, but I mean, and this is, I would say that this is equivalent to, like Qualys vulnerability scanner, or, something else. There's a bunch of other vulnerability scanners that I don't know the names of. Yeah. More so, So.
I would say better to know than not know.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is in the FU Orca category of Amazon announcements right now, because I think they're still bitter with them. So
is it actually Orca? Because it's just vulnerability management, right? So it's taking inventory and looking for.
And that's really Orca's claim to fame, is that they can take your image, you take your AMI, they snapshot it, they restore it on a different box, they scan it, and they tell you what's vulnerable in your image and throw it away, right? But
I thought they were doing the CrowdStrike move where they were looking for malware signatures.
Well, they have now pivoted that direction if you want to go that way, but the core fundamental technology is still very tied to that, and that's why I think Amazon was a little mad at them when they started publishing vulnerabilities regularly, and so they basically got that feature built into their Inspector product too. So makes sense. All right, well, moving on to GCP, which had nothing going on this week. They are definitely on vacation down there in Mountain View. Other than a security analyst diary. I love to read a good security analyst diary. Dear diary, today I detected a DDoS attack and defended against it. But no, that's not actually the case. This is a Chronicle blog post diary, and so they wanted to tell us about some new features that have come to Chronicle recently. One of the things about Chronicle is that it's a very large data lake that it builds in the background to do all your security processing with. And so one of the things that is sort of important is that if you're overwhelming your data lake with ingestion, your data lake may be very behind or have other problems, and you're not getting the data that you need in a timely fashion. And so now they're giving you ingestion metrics. which now with the Chronicle Data Lake now includes streaming updates to help address low latency requirements and provide visibility into the activities of the Chronicle forwarder and feed management feature, which I always appreciate knowing how much I'm ingesting and how it's screwing up all of my things. New support for Yara-L. Chronicle's detection engine provides string and regex matching and timestamps and arithmetic operations, ultimately enabling you to craft even more robust detection than Chronicle's rule engine. With the new Yara-L functionality, enables operations upon several different timestamp fields available in Chronicle's UDM, ultimately enabling you to apply more fine-grained time-based criteria into your detections. Which, in the blog post or the Dear Diary, they get into very, very heavy detail of how you might use this data, which is really interesting, but not really great podcast content. So if that intrigued you in any way, what I just said, it is actually very interesting to read, and I would check that out in the blog post. But I will not bore the rest of our listeners who don't care about security things. And then Chronicle native virus total augment widget is now available to you. Apparently, you used to be able to get this capability to see what your virus total threat is through a Chrome browser extension that was maintained by a third party. Now this is all native to you, so it's built right into the Chronicle console to check out your virus total augment score.
I mean, I can sum up the YARL stuff in a way that at least our listeners won't be so curious that they go off and read the article and then get disappointed. It's functions. So instead of specifying a range of timestamps, you could say how many days. Like, I want to see everything in the last 3 days. You can define a function, that kind of thing. Yeah. Super interesting, but it's really handy, but it's those types of functions that make the tool a lot more usable.
Nice.
Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect, only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution: Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice.
All right, let's move to Azure. First up, Azure Managed Grafana is now generally available with lots of great features and capabilities. And those features include seamless connection to Azure data sources or services and custom things that are not Azure related. Secured access and sharing of Grafana dashboards with Azure AD. So, hey, I have an Azure group. I can now make you have access to my dashboard. New dashboards pre-built for Azure data sources like geo-mapped availability tests and load balancing dashboards, containers, and more. And you can try it out for 30 days for free. And then it's priced based on several factors, including instances, which run at about 6 cents per hour, $6 per month for each active user, and basically 4 pennies per hour for zone redundancy available to you. So not super expensive unless you have a lot of users, and then it might get pricey real quick, or a lot of data flying into those instances and you need more than a couple. By default, you get 2, which is a pretty healthy initial Grafana size, I'd say, until you get to larger Kubernetes scale.
Yeah, I mean, the cost is one thing. It's not that expensive, but I don't like how complex it is, because if you're trying to do forecasting, or if you're trying to evaluate a service, whether it be cost effective, so to base off of, makes it really hard to sort of extrapolate where you'll be in 2-3 years from now, based on when it's the more factors that you have to factor in there. So it's, especially the zone redundancy. Like, I just don't get it. I understand from a product perspective, they're trying to include it and be very transparent about the cost that it takes to operate the service, but it also makes it really hard on the customers.
Yeah.
Isn't it just a second instance running?
Pretty much. Yeah. And then they charge you.
But it's a different zone, so fault tolerance.
Well, I would hope it was in a different zone. Otherwise, it would be kind of pointless.
I mean, do you remember using RDS in the early days?
Was RDS enterprise ready in those days?
I mean,
everything. The multi-instance same AZ feature. I don't remember that one.
Well, it wasn't really advertised that way. It was just like, you can get multiple nodes, and then they just got shoved into the same AZ. And then they came out with a multi-AZ option, and everyone was like, "Oh, that wasn't happening before."
Wait a minute.
Wait a second. Enterprise-ready Azure Monitor change analysis capabilities has been released, which that's complicated. Like, could you give a better name for that? Apparently, change analysis is an observability tool that enables efficient issue triaging and root causing by centrally showing changes inside and outside of Azure web apps. Built on top of Azure's resource graph, the capability securely stores resources and application configuration change data with added role-based access control rules on viewing that sensitive information. Change analysis supports scalable queries across multiple subscriptions, and there are several key change analysis capabilities and integrations that have been released as part of the general availability. First, it's fully integrated into the Azure Monitor portal, of course. Performance and scalability improvements for large queries on change data for those of you doing massive amounts of changes, which is none of you on Azure, I assume. Simplified change data presentations aggregated by subscription and resource groups, and a single pane of glass integrating with existing workflows and tools for diagnosing and solving problems, activity log change history, metrics, drill into change logs, and Azure workbooks.
I think this press release is misleading, and I hate it. Like it's a config like service for Azure workloads, right? So it allows an Azure user to look at what type of API and resource changes have happened in that environment. But it's the fact they abstract things through like inside and outside of web apps, and it's like kind of
Well, and why
really
limit it to web apps? It's sort of weird limitation.
It's a weird limit, and I just don't understand that. And then, every other feature is that it would fall over with any, decent workload on it. And so they've turned that into a press release going, oh, well, now it's enterprise ready. It's like, well, okay. You mean you couldn't scale before, and now you can.
Now you can.
Yeah. Just some of the changes when you dive in, like the amount of things you can display in a dashboard and stuff like that. They weren't ridiculous high. It's not like millions and millions, but the performance, I'm sure, just wasn't there.
Well, if they did one thing right with this product, it was the naming, because all I can think about when I see that is the thousands of times we've been trying to troubleshoot an issue, and all you ask is, what changed? I just tell me what changed. Nothing changed. Nothing. Something changed. No, nothing.
I don't know. Like, everything's always in a state of change. So it's always, I hate that troubleshooting method of what changed. It's very accurate and very useful, but it's also sort of like, we build everything now to auto scale automatically and auto heal automatically and do all these things. Like, the only constant is change.
Yeah. But to be fair, okay, so you're auto scaling, so you have a dynamic number of instances all the time, but your auto scaling rule is the same until you change it. That's what changed, right?
Yeah, but your auto scaling rule is looking at an input metric like your customer. So unless your customers are very static and uniform, which is never the case, and they never do new processes or new things or test against production,
don't do that. What changed? We tested against production. See, that is right there. Works perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that was your impression of enterprise grade. I hate to talk about this next one, which is enterprise grade Edge for Azure static web apps is now generally available, enabling faster page loads, enhanced security, and optimized reliability for your global applications. Enterprise grade Edge combines the capabilities of Azure static web apps, Azure Front Door, and Azure CDN into a single secure cloud CDN platform. With global presence in 118 edge locations, caching the assets at the edge, proactive protection against DDoS attacks, native support for end-to-end IPv6 and HTTP2. I better get on that HTTP3 thing. It's the new thing. Optimized file compression as your final feature, all available to you from the enterprise grade Edge for Azure static web apps.
I mean, fortunately for the Azure marketing department, they didn't provide any details on what makes this different from what they had before. Like there was an Edge, CDN. Now it's enterprise grade. Cool. It does caching assets at the edge. Pretty sure it did that before. So I don't know, but there's no details in the press release, so I have no idea, and I'm not a user.
Smart marketing group.
Well, they don't want to tell you how they were inefficient, inferior before. They just want you to assume they give you many things that
Yeah.
People who are using Edge before and who asked for these features, they know for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're very happy.
Yeah. You call it edge location, but there's only one location.
Yeah, really. We didn't say locations.
Well, Oracle is pleased to give you Lake. OCI Lake service.
Lake
It's a
service.
lake,
So it
just
invents lakes.
Yeah, it's the lake service.
I would like
which
a
apparently,
taco, please.
but on the surface of this, you'd think that's a data lake, but not really, because that's Oracle's big data service. But this OCI Lake service is provides you fine-grained access control to all resource in a data lake's object storage. OCI Lake includes RBAC, lake sharing, data catalog, and data integration services, and connectors to Exadata, MySQL HeatWave, Oracle Autonomous Database, Big Data Services, Data Flow, Data Science Notebooks, and more coming soon. This is all an early access release with upcoming global release in 2023. And so if you're trying to use this right now, there's no use to use Lake, no cost, all free. Free Lake until after GA, then costs you lots of monies. So don't get too excited about it.
That's very confusing. That's the most confusing naming I've ever heard.
I mean, in the annals of cloud naming standards and product, I mean, it's definitely in the bottom 10. The worst ever, I don't know, but yeah, it's not very just, it implies that you're getting a data lake, but you're not getting a data lake. You're just getting the RBAC controls to a data lake that you already built in another data system. So it's a little weird. I give Oracle no props for this one.
No.
I mean, I'm curious to see how these services actually work, because I know the problem that they're trying to solve, and it's just you've got many different data sets. You're trying to control access to portions of that data in your data lake, and and that's from a user perspective as well as like an application. And so there's a bunch of services that are coming up around this, or data lake management, which is really it's interesting, but I haven't really seen a solution that I feel is effective. Right?
That would have been a much better name.
And yeah,
that's all I have to say.
Well, that is it for new news this week. Like I said, it's a short week. So Peter, take us to lightning round.
Unity Catalog for Azure Databricks is now GA.
Yeah. If I was doing game development, I'd be throwing bricks everywhere. So this makes total sense.
So this isn't even tied to the Unity platform at all.
I know, but I'm going to play it off like it is.
So bad. This is the same thing as the Lake announcement, just by another terrible name. Like they're just trying to unify access to data.
The Lake House.
To the Lake House. Yeah.
Oh, the Lake House. Great movie. Azure Cosmos DB integrated cache is now GA.
I mean, like, the fact that there wasn't a cache before, I call shenanigans. Like, this isn't something new. It was always there. Just they made it bigger and something they could charge you for. Nice try, Azure.
Fishy. You can now authenticate to Azure Service Bus using managed identities.
I mean, was it all anonymous before? Like, how did you authenticate before? Were they managed by somebody? There's always somebody involved.
I'll take features that should exist at GA time, Alex. Yeah.
Yes. AWS announces open source credentials fetcher to simplify Microsoft AD access from Linux containers.
How to ruin a perfectly good Linux container. Add AD to the mix and stir.
No. It's like, take that, dev team. Now your terrible excuse why you can't port .NET to containers and you have to run on Windows is no more. Ha.
AWS Fargate announces availability of Microsoft Windows Server 2022 images for Amazon ECS.
Which, remember, is the only appropriate way to run a Windows host container is through Fargate. That way you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
How about AWS config conformance pack templates can now be stored in AWS Systems Manager?
You really know when AWS is scratching the bottom of the barrel of feature ideas when they're like, hey, what if we just made it easier to use S3 and call it a feature?
Yeah. I do love this because they're all the announcements for config are like how to delegate it to a specific account in the organization, empowering the organization to scan multiple things. And now this is sort of the other way, where it's like, no, distribute all of our configurations to all the accounts in our org.
All of the things. Amazon Managed Service for Prometheus Alert Manager and Ruler Logs now available in Amazon CloudWatch Logs.
Because who watches Prometheus? Well, of course, CloudWatch watches Prometheus. Duh. I mean, No one watches CloudWatch, but Prometheus has to get watched.
Well, maybe you set up Prometheus metrics on your CloudWatch ingestion, and then if you got the full circle.
Ooh.
Yeah, you just loop them through your alert. It's an alert loop.
Yeah.
Announcing new AWS console home widgets for recent AWS blog posts and launch announcements. That's exciting.
So remember when they came out with widgets for the homepage when we said, "Oh, we can't wait to see really exciting things they're going to do with them."
Yeah.
And these are the first new ones they announced: blog posts and launch announcements.
Yeah.
You can save yourself a lot of time. Just listen to the Cloud Pod.
Yeah. Yeah. I will. Thank you for now making an extra chore of things I have to disable on my Amazon console homepage.
Do you think this is the first launch announcement in the launch announcements wizard?
Widget? I didn't actually go and I didn't actually go and look at it. So
I kind of have to go look now.
I didn't want to log into the console today, but now I'm going to. Thank you for that, Peter. And that's how Peter got a point.
Yeah.
Give it to Peter.
Yeah.
And that's it. We wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
That is it.
I'm going to, despite the barrage of content that Justin gave us, I can't get over the fact that you snuck in a Jeopardy reference under your breath. I don't even know if people heard it. It was so good. Giving it to Ryan.
That was well done. Moved you up to the 5, Ryan. You're on my heels, 2 down. Kept it competitive this year. I mean, also helped that Peter was gone for like 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 8 points missing just from Peter not being here.
Yeah. And then if we keep sabotaging, Jonathan, so he never comes in, then I've got a chance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, there are some things coming up. VMware, whatever they called it, Event Horizon or VMware. Yeah, Explorer. VMware Explorer. That's what it was. That's over now, so we don't talk about that anymore. But September is still coming around the corner. The CSA conference on September 26th through the 30th in Bellevue, Washington. ElasticCon right after that, October 4th in San Francisco. And Google Cloud Next, October 11th through the 13th. That's practically a month away, guys. It's not even far.
Wow.
It's going to be exciting to see what they come out with in that announcements series. So looking forward to all those things and more. Check out the show notes if you're curious on other things coming up that we are checking out and keeping an eye on. Or if you have ideas for things to send to us to add to the events, we'd love to get those as well. So we will pimp your event for free. So please send those in to us. With editor discretion, of course. And that is it for another fantastic week here in the cloud.
Bye, everybody.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel, go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions. Well, this week, a big tech event happened. Probably the biggest tech event that is not cloud-related of the year, in my opinion, because I'm an Apple fanboy. And, of course, it was the iPhone 14 event. Woo! And they had announcements for new watches, new phones, and new AirPods Pro. So I thought we'd be like an Apple podcast for a couple minutes here and talk about all the new cool things and what you're excited about. Because everyone here, because Jonathan's not here, is an iPhone user. I think Peter's an iPhone user. Jonathan is our lone Android user, so he's not here to humbug us. So we can enjoy our joy of all these things that we think are new and that Android's had for years. So
I am an iPhone user, and I bought a 13 the day before the 14s came out. Just wanted to say that.
Your timing is impeccable. Was that a decision that was forced on you by a broken phone, or was that just bad luck?
I just don't care. To be honest, I love the fact that the 13s reintroduced the Mini, that form factor. And the form factor is really the main thing I look for in phones. I don't take that many pictures. I don't do that much stuff with my phones. And I just wanted the one that fits in my pocket, and I've been waiting for years. And so I liked.
And that was your last chance to get it because the 14 did not include a Mini. So.
Well, there you go. I made the right call.
You made the right call. Yeah. But you did pay full price for that versus I think you probably got a discount the day after on the 13.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm philanthropic that way. I like to give Tim Cook more.
You like to give the most profitable company in the world, money. That's good.
It's really big of you, Peter.
Hey, really, it's very humble, very humble.
Yeah.
I think Ryan, you said you had some questions for me about the announcements.
I know that usually you're my go-to source for the Apple announcements, and I've read the headlines and including the one where it's like I think it was, Steve Jobs' daughter not being all that excited about the features of the iPhone 14.
Well, she retweeted an Instagram thing where guys in a red red shirt, basically. It's like one of those lumberjack shirts. I'm forgetting the name. I'm from Seattle. I can't even remember the name of it at this moment. But anyways, he gets a new one. Looks like it's identical to it. And it's like, oh great, my new iPhone 14 is here. It's the same shirt he's already wearing, which is sort of
flannel.
The joke, but flannel. Thank you, flannel.
It's
been a long week, man. Long week. The one that I love the best was that they took the notch, which has been sort of made fun of mercilessly, and then they made it a feature by renaming it to the dynamic island that dynamically shifts size and shape. And all I can think of is like, oh, so you touch barred the notch and made it into a feature. It's well done on that one.
Yeah, because it doesn't ever go away all the way, right? Like, which is the main complaint, right? Is that it's taking up valuable screen real estate.
Yeah, but the secret is that dynamic island doesn't go away either.
I know. That's the funny part.
It's just ridiculous.
Like, down.
It just moves around now and gets bigger and smaller.
Now it gets bigger if you get a notification. Yeah.
It's a terrible idea. But it's just sort of find like the touch bar of it has a bunch of new notifications, actions, and things that'll be interesting to see how they actually work. I'm a little curious on that. And then some other things that they did do, eSIM support only now, so they got rid of physical SIMs, which
wow.
On one side I'm like, thank God, because I was tired of SIMs 15 years ago, let alone now with eSIM. But the one challenge with eSIMs for those who travel internationally in some countries, they don't support eSIM yet. So this is going to be a fun couple of years as all those carriers now rush to support eSIM, just to support the iPhone, which is one of the most profitable phones they can sell. So I expect that'll be a good thing. But I am curious about being able to quickly switch between, like, when I go to India or I go to other international locations, like, can I get a pay-as-you-go eSIM from a vendor, and like, can I use it in this country? I'm curious, because like, that's the dream. I just don't know if it exists.
Another great reason I got a 13 and I didn't know it.
I wish they'd register SIMs, right? Because I think that the SIM registration and the ability to spoof phone numbers and stuff is a little too easy, and so like not that the physical thing helps in any way, but like if you could sort of keep a better track of that, maybe it's a security feature.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea too. They now, if you are a person, one of the big themes of the event this week was Apple will prevent you from dying through like basically like car crash detection. This feature for the phone basically lets it send an emergency SOS to a satellite from your phone. So if you're in the backcountry and you break your leg and you hold your phone up to the sky and it tells you where the satellite's at, and then it'll send a very small message to a call center who will send help for you, which I think is cool.
What if you break your arm?
Well, then you use the other arm to hold the phone up.
And when you break that arm, you use your nose.
Yeah. I mean, it can't save you from everything, but it can save you from a lot of things. That's And then the new watches, they gave you a new Ultra watch for your really diehard fitness people. This is not a watch for me whatsoever. But like if you're a diver, it goes down to more depth. It has longer battery life. If you're ultra runner, it has like 36 hours of battery charge for them. Super rugged titanium case, fully waterproof. It's quite interesting. And then they give you a new Series 8 watch with temperature sensors to help with fertility tracking, which is important for our female friends or for those who are trying to get pregnant. It's a great way to be able to test that. And of course, with Apple's privacy, they highlighted that quite heavily because, of course, in states where abortions are illegal, they don't want that data subpoenaed and used against you. Which is interesting. They finally killed the Apple Watch 3 and gave you the Apple Watch SE, which is the new cheap one, which starts at $249 with GPS or $299 for the solid version, which is cheap. And then AirPods Pro 2, which I was super excited about because my AirPods are getting a little long in the tooth, which I'm super excited about. So yeah, I mean, good announcements overall.
Cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm still nursing my Watch 3, and I'm like, I don't know, it's holding up quite well, which, as abusive as I am to peripherals, like, this is kind of amazing.
Yeah, I have a 7, but I will skip the 8 just because I don't see anything super compelling with it for me. I mean, I don't have a fertility problem that I need to track for myself personally. So it's not really a feature for me, but I'm glad it's there. But I just don't see anything compelling for the watch this year. I think the watch for me has always been kind of like an every other year purchase or every 3-year purchase even. is really once the battery starts dying in them, that's when you replace them. It's kind of my rule of thumb. But the 3 is pretty slow, so I imagine you'll probably see a big bump going to the newer one if you wanted to make the jump. But it's not necessary until the battery starts crapping out.
Yeah, exactly. I think because of the 3's slowness, and I'm not a big user of it, right? Like I want a thing that notifies me when I'm supposed to be in a meeting that I forgot. Like I'm not, and then it tells the time, which is a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really suck a lot of battery power. So I was, like still getting close to 36 hours on a charge, just with not because I don't use it all that much. It's always off. So it's kind of neat. So yeah, I keep waiting for the showstopper feature on the new watches to see like, I get rid of this thing, but it hasn't come yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think this year, if you're that super outdoorsy guy or gal, I think the Ultra is potentially compelling to you. Or if you're a diver and you really like your Apple Watch and have been, you use one of those really large Garmin $1,000 back-to-pack watches, then I think that's a good market. But yeah, other than that, I didn't really see anything compelling. I mean, even the iPhone 14 compared to the 13, is not a huge upgrade. In many ways, that's the joke again from Steve Jobs' daughter, is that it's the same thing. It's the same form factor. It's slightly bigger, but it's not really that much bigger. The emergency SOS thing is a nice feature, but again, it's not a feature you're going to use every day or that you hope to ever use.
Hopefully never. Yeah, exactly.
And the ability for you to be able to detect crashes and stuff like that, that's helpful from a health and safety thing. But one thing I think is kind of cool is coming into is the watches are getting a power save mode finally, which is not the on the watch right now. I think if you get 10% battery, it turns into like this weird firmware mode where it only shows you the time, so you don't.
Which is useless.
Which is useless.
Like,
but a low power mode, like I would definitely use that. So I'm kind of glad about that one. I'm excited to see how much better that makes my watch, because I really can't get through more than a day without having to charge my watch up.
Yeah, I mean, if you could tailor that too, or you could tune. If you could turn specific things, like I don't know, like certain app notifications to only work in low power mode, like I think I would just leave it on all the time.
Yeah. I think the first watch I will buy from Apple will be the one when I don't need the phone. Just the watch and earbuds, and I'm done.
I mean, you sort of can do that today, as long as you don't need to do, email or type things on the thing.
Because you still need a phone to install the apps and to.
No, I mean you don't need a phone.
Face.
I mean, you don't need a phone anymore to install apps. The App Store exists on the watch.
So does it? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess
so I could wear the watch today, put in my earbuds, go for a jog, listen to my Spotify, and if I need to call someone, I can call them.
Yes.
Oh wow, it's come a long way.
As long as you have the cell phone version of the watch.
Right. Yeah. Which is probably.
I'm not sure you can buy the plan without paying the phone plan though, because it's a tack.
Well, I mean, they would charge you more money for it in theory. But yeah, like my kids, they both have Apple Watches because I refuse to buy them cell phones because I don't think they're old enough for them yet. So they both have watches, and they're technically paired to mine, but they're pretty much completely isolated. Like they don't do anything. They do everything on their watch. Like they install apps and games and walkie-talkie each other and all the things that I don't ever use on my watch because they're annoying. But the kids love them to play with them and do those things with that. So, yeah, I mean, you pretty much can. I think you're right. You probably do have to have a phone to do the initial setup, but then after that, you don't need the phone. So if you had an old iPhone, you could just set up the watch and then never look back.
I mean, I have a phone at home, but buy the watch, and then when you don't want to carry your phone with you wherever you're going because it doesn't fit in your pocket, then
and that reality is just
watch.
Yeah, it's definitely been there. Yeah, like you can definitely do that. Like, and I know people that do that, especially runners, and it makes sense that the market for the new watch is going after that because a lot of people are like, screw this big computer. Or like a trouser Mac, as I like to call mine. I don't want to carry that everywhere.
Yeah,
it definitely really kills the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Definitely kills the whole need for having a mini iPad. Like the fact that mini iPads exist anymore, I'm just sort of like I chuckle about that every time. I'm like, it's not that much bigger than my phone.
It's really not. Yeah.
Are you guys gonna buy anything? We know Peter just bought a 13, so he's out. Are you buying one, Ryan? Or are you waiting?
I'm waiting for my watch to die, and then I will buy an 8, most likely.
How about on the phone side?
No. I was very reluctant to buy a 13 upgrading from my 8S. So I don't upgrade every time for sure. And I was really reluctant because I thought some of the rumored features of the iPhone 13, which were supposedly shelved by pandemic and supply chain issues, to the 14, and they're still not here. So now I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just not going to bother then. So yeah, we'll see. I'll probably wait for my phone to die and buy the iPhone 27 when it comes out.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. I keep waiting for the I keep waiting for like a form factor redesign, because like they've been sticking with this 3 frying pans on the back, the unibody case basically for this is the 3rd or 4th phone that they basically look exactly the same, other than the notch is changing, which is not a feature to be excited. Maybe they're waiting to the point they can get to the the point they don't actually need to have that camera bump, and then they'll do a new form factor to celebrate the fact that they no longer have the dreaded notch. But then now it's a feature, I don't know if you ever get rid of it.
Yeah, it's kind of.
They did finally kill the touch bar with the new Max. So
finally,
yeah. Well, good. Yeah, I picked up a 14. I pre-ordered it this morning, and I also got the new AirPods, because the AirPods I was all about.
The AirPods. I love the sound cancellation of mine.
The new AirPod Pros are 30%
so, like, if it's
better.
even better.
Yeah, 30% better. I'm like, it's already incredible. I mean, it's not as good as the Sony over-ear canceling headphones that I use on like airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, that's because those are massive, big batteries.
They're huge. They're hard to carry around. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't expect that from my AirPod Pros, but the fact that they're even saying they're at 30%, that's a noticeable improvement. So
yeah.
I just can't wear those. They fall out of my ears. I have to wear over the ear style.
I did have to replace the tips with like the foamy tips, because otherwise I had the same issue.
So the original AirPods I couldn't wear because they were just too hard in my ears. So the Pros, with the fact that the little thing goes in your ear and all that, those worked out really well for me. So it worked out for me, but yeah. So those stay in my ear pretty well and don't have any issues. But it's definitely I hear a lot of people say they can't wear AirPods. So I couldn't. The other problem with the original AirPods was they didn't quite fit my ear structure without causing pain after a while.
Oh.
So the AirPod Pros were always a plus because they were smaller, and then they had the better fit and the noise canceling, which was all great.
Yeah, I like the Beats. I like the Beats over the ears. They're really good.
Yeah, I mean, you're still getting an Apple product with the Beats. You're just getting the Beats branded one. So
integration's great.
The spatial audio I could take or less. It's a bit of a I don't think it's that compelling of a feature. Like like maybe in some games it's cool, or a specific thing that but like it actually takes me. If I notice when it's on accident on my iPad, that if I'm watching a movie and I turn my head and all of a sudden the audio shifts, like it takes me right out of whatever.
It bothers me. Yeah, it does. I'm the same way. I'm like, nah, pass. Turn that right off.
They do have a new thing on the AirPods though, where you can like change the volume now by like slowly stroking the stem.
That's actually pretty handy, because that is one of the things that, like, the accuracy of the controls in general.
Well, I mean, really the only 2 controls on the AirPods Pro today are, Siri and mute, unmute, or stop, pause, depending on what it is. And so those are really the only 2 controls you have. You can't control volume unless you say Siri, change the volume.
Can't you answer a phone call or something?
Yes, you can push it to answer a phone call too.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can now do this motion on the stem where it'll basically lower the volume, I'm kind of excited about that idea too, because that's probably the one thing I always hated about the AirPods, is that you had to get the phone to turn them down, or Siri, and I don't like Siri. So,
but you also have the watch, and the watch will turn. So it's, I don't know.
Yeah, so many options, right? Well, good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to my new Apple toys when they get here in a few weeks.
Awesome.
Enjoy. Let us know how it works out.
I will. I'll let you know later.
All right. Bye.